Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Singapore Tourism Board Marketing College Masterclass Series 2021. A quick housekeeping note before we start today's session. For the best webinar experience, this webinar is best viewed on the Zoom app. So you may like to download the app before we start the session proper. So a little bit about the Masterclass series. This was launched in 2020 and is a learning experience by the STB Marketing College that targets travel and tourism stakeholders to deep dive into specific marketing topics to drive agile, bold, and creative marketing. Building on the success from the last year, we have partnered with even more industry players and topic experts to create meaningful and relevant content for our webinars, really with the objective to equip all of us in the travel and tourism industry with marketing knowledge to effectively recover from COVID-19. Now, more than ever before, I'm sure we're all realizing that marketing capabilities are essential to enable travel and tourism businesses to traverse through opportunities and challenges in our COVID normal. So today we're very lucky to have with us the team from Adobe to take us through data-driven marketing and customer experience the road ahead. Today, we will learn about stitching and analyzing consumer lifestyle data to enable personalized omni-channel experiences, and also dive deep into what marketing with data in a cookieless and privacy-driven world will look like. Again, this will enable us to build our business continuity for all of us across the industry. So I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers. We have with us today Mr. Gaurav Kumar, the Senior Solutions Consultant, Southeast Asia with Adobe, and he specializes in Adobe Experience Cloud products for data-driven marketing. Gaurav has more than 13 years of experience in roles revolving around data-driven marketing and transformation, and comes with first-hand experience of building and scaling marketing and digital analytics at one of the largest hospitality companies in the world. So he's definitely got boots on ground experience. And we'll also like to welcome Ms. Marianne Loh, the head of Southeast Asia Legal and Senior Managing Counsel for Adobe, who oversees all transactions and advises on issues that may impact Adobe's regional business, including data protection, cross-border data, licensing, industry regulations, public policy, license compliance, and intellectual property. So definitely we have the right experts here with us today to take us through this session. Over to you, Gaurav and Marianne.
Hi, so good morning, everyone. I am Marianne, so thank you for taking the time this morning to join STB and Adobe. Today, I'm pleased to spend time with you over this webinar to share how we see the power of data, the opportunities it presents for the travel and hospitality industry, as well as how a data-driven marketing model can really help delight the customer. Why are we here today? So no doubt the world has changed, whether it's work from home, customer expectations, customer behavior through their buying and spending habits, that has all changed. And accordingly, so should the marketing strategy. So today we would like to discuss and share with you our thoughts around the industry trends. Gaurav will help take you through the future of data management and marketing, especially how we're going to cope in a cookieless world against a backdrop of rising privacy consent regimes. Follow on, we will also explain the importance of a customer 360 view and how to personalize experiences. And the last segment will be a marketing ROI and the measurement of a data-driven marketing model. And the remaining time we have, it will certainly be a Q&A session. So let's start with the industry landscape and business continuity. So if we think about it, data fragmentation is a problem in many sectors, but the problem is bigger and more apparent in the travel and hospitality, the T&H brands, largely because of the large data inventory that they hold from airlines to hotelers and the entire ecosystem that supports travel. Adjacent to that is also systems fragmentation, whereby different sets of data sits in different systems across the marketing team, the sales, and the customer-facing departments, all creating silos. So data shows that actually 73% of the T&H brands agree that they haven't done a good enough job of actually reducing the fragmentation and trying to reduce silos within the organization. And if we think about how we want to really delight a customer, there are certainly some challenges and obstacles that a T&H brand will face. For one, the number of marketing channels and the touch points and devices that a customer might interact with your digital storefront is increasing. This is a huge problem for brands because they will now need to have a cohesive strategy to manage all the data points to actually effectively use it. Add on to that, customers' expectations are also rising. They don't want to see the same ad all the same time. Brands need to have dynamic content, a large variety, in fact, a large volume to optimize and attract customers to their website or their mobile applications. And yet budgets of these organizations are not increasing relative to these content volume needs. And if you are a premium brand, the customer expects even more out of you. They want a more personalized experience when dealing with your brand. If a well-known hotel and a person staying there, they expect the right prompts to show up at the right point of their staycation. And so there's a need for brands to anticipate the needs of the customer even before they know it. And of course, last but not least, we have the COVID. We all know that has reduced operational efficiency, especially if the organization has not already harnessed the power of cloud technologies to facilitate work from home situations. With those three challenges in mind, what we see as the top three areas of investment for the T&H brands in 2021 are these three that you see below. And what's important to note is that they're all interlinked. Doing well in one area will certainly feed into the next, and that propels all three spheres into a positive upward spiral. So if I may just direct your attention to the one on the right, the bottom right-hand side, which says 29% focus of investment into acquiring customers through direct channels. This has always been a key priority and will continue to be one in 2021. But in order to do this well as well, it requires investment in the next sphere that you see on the left. 34% of the investment should be directed at making sure that there's a consistent experience across all your digital touchpoints and channels. And so if these two spheres are done right, it ultimately leads into the top one that you see, which is, of course, a growth in your traveler and guest base. As we think about these changing and challenging COVID times, business continuity should be and is top of mind for a lot of brands. And the ability of a business to succeed in the long run really depends on their ability to command data, to use digitally enabled sales and marketing teams, and of course, backed by cloud technology. So if we think about how do we succeed to be a data-driven business, we see these 6 pillars that you see on the screen right now as the pillars to be successful with business continuity at its cornerstone. So let's take a look at the red circle on the left, digital adoption. As we have said before, acquiring customers through direct channels. Brands need to continue to find new ways to do that well. If we look at the other red circle, diagonally on the right-hand side, outreach and proactive communication is yet a second pillar that we see as important. If a hotel is proactive and public in telling customers what they're doing to keep them safe, this actually is what we call leveraging a position of trust. It builds a new level of relationship and understanding between the customer. That is for the long run. And of course, the third pillar that we see as important is community support at the bottom, which is your social media engagement to make sure your message reaches the right audience. A fourth pillar would be, of course, to consider and shift your brick and mortar strategy to a digital-first storefront experience. Not forgetting the other pillars at the top, the fifth one, new ways of working to be considered, as well as the sixth pillar, deeper understanding of the customer. And all these will help to actually determine the success of an organization in a data-driven economy. So I will now turn it to my colleague Gaurav to take you through the details of the future of data management and marketing.
Thanks, Marian, and hello and welcome everybody again, and thanks for taking your time out to listen to this. This is an important topic, and based on the context that Marian has set up already, again, thanks her for that. I would now like to get into a little bit of a details and try to understand, well, if this is the situation, if this is the context, what does it really mean in terms of implementation? What are the challenges ahead? And how is that you as a brand, a travel, tourism, hospitality brand, how you can be ready for what is in store in future for data and data-driven marketing, right? So let's talk about the most obvious problem that I'm sure everybody who's listening to this is aware of. There are some sudden changes into this, but what this really means is that because of the demand from privacy constraints from the customers, platforms have started to actually impose certain restrictions and becoming more and more privacy-first businesses. And one of that is the demise of third-party cookies that everybody has been talking about. Now, the biggest problem with this change, even with a stretched timeline, is going to be addressability, right? The challenge of reduced addressability. What it really means is that you have lesser avenues to reach out to your customers. And this is because the way we have been doing advertising, the way we have been running digital advertising, the way we have been running data-driven marketing, so to say, has been dependent on an ecosystem that is reliant on third-party cookies. Now, this change is not all negative. This is also positive because this leads to rationalization of the way we do marketing. This leads to you owning data and intelligence of your customer. And this leads to a fair value exchange for customers also in terms of they asking a question, why are you collecting my data? Why are you targeting me in a certain way, right? So there is, of course, an impact on the advertising space and how things are going to change. Now, it's not only limited to advertising. Now, this change, cookies and anything that is related to privacy, consent management, and consumers asked to be a part of the value exchange or data exchange is going to be really impacting various aspects of digital marketing. So to say personalization, so to say retargeting, there are many, many facets of it. And the problem that needs to be solved at hand is going to be solved by being reliant on the data that you own as a brand or as an organization. Now that's called first party data. That is your data of your customers. So now let's try to learn a little bit more about what does that really mean? How does that become real in terms of what kind of systems do you need? What are the challenges that needs to be precisely solved, right? So let's look at the specifics of what marketers really need to solve for, right? So the first thing, as I said, because of the privacy ask, because of the changes that is happening from the platforms, now there is a need for marketing to be reliant on more and more durable identifiers. Now, what that really means is that targeting everything that you do in terms of reaching out to your customers with a communication is going to be based more and more on durable identities, meaning email, phone numbers, addresses, so on and so forth. The second piece is that while this change is happening, consumers also expect more and more real-time personalization, right? Because that's the whole idea of consumer asking brands, why are you collecting my data? What is that you are going to do with this? And what they expect in return is that they should be getting an absolutely real-time, hyper-personalized experience wherever they touch you as a brand. The third piece, as I said, most of these changes are driven by privacy and governance. And this has been a very, very important change because your consumers not trusting you as a brand in terms of why you are collecting data is going to be difficult for you as a brand to position yourself, to evolve. And this is a regulatory change that is happening across markets, across industries around the globe. And the last bit, which is, it has been a perennial problem. It has not been solved in entirety, but it still exists, which is the fragmentation of systems, data, even practices, processes, people in the organization. So the consolidation of marketing platforms or consolidation of systems, it is still going to be an urgent need for marketers. It's an important problem to be solved, and this needs to be solved now. Now, if you look at the impact that I was talking about. Let's try to go a little bit deeper into what precisely is the impact here. So I've put together some examples of the different areas of data-driven marketing, what are the components, and how they're going to be impacted based on third-party cookie restriction changes, or whether in terms of the privacy and consent-related changes that is happening right now. That's making sort of rationalization in terms of data collection, but also data uses. So if you look at data collection and linking the identity of customers, that's the holy grail of consumer experience, holy grail of data marketing or data-driven marketing. The data collection piece is going to be sort of impacted because right now, when you look at data, whether you talk about first-party data, you talk about second-party data, which is your data partnerships, or whether you talk about third-party data. That is the data coming from data providers in the marketplace. There are, especially the third-party piece, is heavily reliant on third-party cookies. It's just the way the technology works. And this leads to a lot of inconsistencies in terms of how the data look, how you can use data, latency in terms of data availability, all of those issues. So that part is going to be more and more impacted. And the data collection piece is going to be very, very reliant on you as a brand collecting data from the touch point on your owned properties. So whether your website, your app, and things like that. And then that needs to be worked upon with linking of those identities, right? So you can't afford to have data collected across various systems with very fragmented identities and you not knowing that it's the same customer across different touch points. So there is going to be a humongous shift in terms of the way data collection and linking works. Now, moving forward in terms of the use cases, if you talk about personalization for that matter, right? There's a part of personalization that we do today. For example, if there is a customer who's brand new to you, came to your website or an app for the first time, anywhere touches you, you have no idea about that particular customer, right? And now a part of how you can do some kind of personalization to that customer is dependent upon third-party technology as well. So there has to be a shift in terms of how do you become ready using your first-party data to personalize for customers who are known, but also customers who are absolutely unknown to you. And there has to be a technology change that needs to drive this. The third part, which is reaching to your existing customers, whether you're talking about cross-selling your products, whether you're talking about loyalty, reaching your existing customers in terms of most effective communication or orchestrated communication across the channels. Now, this is also going to be impacted because, if you are trying to look at a paid media channel, for example, to reach your customers, existing customers, that again is dependent upon third-party technology. So what is going to change in future is one, your reliance on walled gardens such as Facebook, social media channels, which is based on first-party based identifiers, is going to be increasing. But you also got to be figuring out, well, is that where you want to put all the dollars on? Do you want to become self-reliant in terms of knowing your customers and reaching out to them throughout the life cycle in terms of what more can you offer them? And finally, the advertising piece, that is prospecting new customers, acquiring new customers, retargeting customers who are dropping off from a certain part of the journey. Now, this is heavily dependent upon third-party cookies. So now this is going to be largely shifted towards, as I said, known identifiers or durable identifiers. And there has to be a lot of technology that is going to happen this. But most importantly, for you as a brand, what is important is that you are ready building that first party asset, right? In terms of knowing your customers and building. So I kind of explained this, but the future of reaching your known customers is going to be very, very dependent upon you being able to match your existing customers with a people-based identifier. So whether you talk about reaching out on Facebook, Google, whether you talk about common IDs in the market, or whether you talk about reaching one-to-one with publishers. But there's going to be one-to-one integration at individual customer level data. If you look at the future of prospecting, that is advertising, the way you want to reach out to your unknown customers, prospects, there are going to be significant changes in terms of the technology and the workflows, right? So the first one is that publisher direct. So a lot of publishers, and this problem is not just brands' problem, right? This is a problem for everybody. This is a problem to be solved jointly by brands, by publishers, by ad tech, martech companies, and everybody is doing their bit. right? So the publisher direct model for advertising is going to be getting more and more traction. What it really means is that on brand side, you should be able to build your asset that can be connected to a publisher's direct asset. And on publisher side, of course, they're going to have an advantage in terms of connecting to inventory that is absolutely premium. So publisher direct model is going to be coming more and more. Then there is a joint effort in the industry to come up with common IDs, industry level IDs, which is a great effort, which essentially means that there will be new kind of joint IDs, consortiums coming up that you should be able to tap upon in terms of getting that scale of audience that you should be able to connect with your first party data. Contextual targeting, that is again based on sort of intelligence from the browser, where people are browsing your content in terms of the context they are living in. Now, this is of course going to get more and more stable traction because this is not dependent upon third-party cookies. And finally, the way the current programmatic works today is going to see a slowdown in the advertising space because of the reliance on third party. But having said so, it is not going to die. It's going to be just shifting the gears in terms of being people-based ID, and there has to be consolidation in terms of being reliant on people-based IDs rather than just reliant on cookies. So similar effect on personalization, I kind of explained this, but it is now going to be more and more driven by the data that you own, the second party data partnerships that come across with a brand, similar brand or a complementary brand coming together with you and having a joint benefit in terms of sort of getting the richness of the profile of your customers. So a lot of this is going to be translating into industry-wide best practices, industry-wide new initiatives, but you as a brand, no matter which scale of business are you, got to be ready with accepting the fact that you need to know more and more about your customers firsthand and collect the first party data. And hence all of these use cases are going to be catered through sort of first party data assets and need to be sort of compliant in terms of all the regions that is driving this change, that is privacy, consent, and also the personalization needs from the customers. So how do you really prepare for this, right? If this is the situation, what do you need to do? Now, the first step that you need to do is really maximize your first party data asset, right? I mean, the onus is not just on publishers. The onus is not just on an ad tech company or in the ad tech industry by and large. The onus is on you, right? Even with recent Google announcement that says that the timeline for third-party cookies demise has been stretched. Now, that's a great opportunity for all of us to prepare for a better future, be more rational in terms of solving this problem. So yes, start your effort today in terms of building your first-party data assets with the fair practices to collect your data, customers' data firsthand. Second piece is this is really the time for you to think top-down strategically in terms of putting customer journeys in the front. Because when you start talking about collecting data, first-party data, building that data asset, this is a cost-intensive exercise. You need to put resources, and you better be prepared with the right strategy in terms of understanding your customer journeys to the detail. Third piece, how do you diversify? So I talked about a couple of things that are going to change in the advertising space. For example, you're going to be reliant on publisher direct, you're going to be reliant on walled gardens, you're going to be reliant on one-to-one different kinds of connections, industry IDs, so on and so forth. So in terms of media exposure, how do you avoid a lock-in and say that your marketing and media strategy is not just dependent on one single platform? Because tomorrow, again, one major change will come, and you might want to look for sort of a strategy that is answering to the question of, are you diverse enough so that you do not get locked in and you lose the focus? And finally, all of these changes happening right now is a great opportunity for all of us to evaluate our technology stack, consolidate, think about what is the most optimal solution in terms of this customer-centric consolidated strategy for marketing, advertising that is reliant on first-party data. So, in terms of journey, I think first thing is really having that first-party data mindset, right? So, have you started thinking of it? Have you started making some changes? And now there are a couple of areas of these changes that needs to be, see some light today. So the first one is really that mindset of collecting more and more data. Give your customers a region so that they can give you data, trust you and give you data. Now, what is the value for customers? And you got to be innovative in terms of if you're introducing, paywalls, if you're introducing ways of authentication, and this needs to be substantiated and hence proved by the fact that if consumers give you data, you are going to be giving something back to them. And to start with, it's, other than offers and benefits, it's essentially a personalized experience because there is so much clutter for the customer. So how do you make the whole journey from search to book to stay to come back to loyalty, all of that, more and more sort of easy, but also beneficial for the customers. So that's the first part. The second part is organizational change. I mean, this cannot be just done by your marketing teams. This cannot be done by an external party. This needs to be an organizational level change. We need to change, alter, or actually improve the DNA of the organization in terms of how everybody has started looking inwards in terms of what is the scale and asset that we own as first-party data, and how is that we can use it. And lastly, optimize your architecture. So whether you're looking at building, buying, whether you're looking at partnerships, optimize what is your architecture in the cookie-less world. And it's not just about cookie-less, but it's also about all kind of privacy changes that is happening right now and how you can be future ready. So evaluate. This is the right time to evaluate your strategy. I also think that the whole COVID situation has given us one in short term, the recovery perspective, when we are working on, well, what can we do next? Do we activate domestic tourism? Can we just, improve the cross-sell opportunities and things like that? But it also gives us an opportunity to evaluate the long-term transformational goals. And for that, I think the cookie-less architecture evaluation and consolidation is very, very important. So let's assume that we are able to do all of this, right? What does it really mean? What it really means is that you've got to have a system, you've got to have a practice, you've got to have a mindset for building a customer 360-degree view. And hence, activate personalized, in an ideal scenario, real-time omni-channel experiences to your customers across the touch point. So what happens if you get into this journey is that you start evaluating two things, right? And I started giving more and more value to these two. That's one is customer experience. So that becomes the central part of everything that you do as an organization. Your technology, your marketing initiatives, your overall strategy, your new business avenues, pivots in your business, your scaling strategy, everything is centered around customer experience. And the second base is that how do you go beyond just product, right? So how do you infuse all of this, the data-driven approach in your brand identity? How does it become your differentiator? How does it become a differentiator in terms of consumers trusting you more than another brand because of your best practices, privacy by design in terms of the way you collect and use data? So you've got to having centralized and focused on customer experience, and then you need to look beyond the value that is coming from that by just directly selling product, but selling experience, and then infusing all of that in your DNA. So having said so, this is not easy, right? So this is a lot of complications. And as it is I'm drawing the right current slide, you'll realize that it spans from different kinds of fragmentation issues, right? So there is system fragmentation, there is data fragmentation leading to people processes fragmentation. And then overall, what it does is basically, one, it doesn't enable you to build that consolidated view of the customer, but also slows down various processes. So whether you talk about insights, whether you talk about acting on the insights, whether you talk about activating marketing, all of that is delayed and there is a latency and sort of half-filled view of the customer. So the fragmentation needs to be solved. And what do you need to do then? So if you have to solve the fragmentation, how do you get it, right? Is there a technology? Do I need to build something? Do I need to partner with someone? All those questions coming into mind. Scope of this webinar, I will just try to give you a few of the things that probably might help you to think. Now, this is a blueprint for customer data platform. And when I say customer data platform, this of course comes with, you can build it internally, you can buy it, you can use a platform. There are so many ways of doing this, but keeping it neutral in terms of the necessity for a customer data platform is really building that first party data asset. So on the left-hand side, there are three core components of this whole customer data platform, a unified view of the customers. The first part is the data collection. Various things that you need to consider when you're talking about data collection. One is that how do you get one single system that can connect your known and unknown customer data, right? So somebody comes to your website, logs in versus doesn't log in. How do you get all that information together and stitch in a way? The second bit is your data batch data? Is it your real-time data? Is your system good enough to handle all of that? Once you have data coming from different kinds of sources, enterprise sources, integration with your partners, integration with external systems, wherever the data can come from. Now, all of this data, when that comes inside, there are key core components in terms of what you need to do with that data. And the first part is that you've got to have a common data model so that the fragmentation problem is solved. Second, you've got to be stitching the data. So how do you know that somebody who is using an email ID on the website versus a person who is giving you a call on call center is the same person? Now, this is the biggest piece of customer data platform. So you've got to be stitching data in terms of getting that unified view of the customers so that you can apply various strategies on data. One is that you've got to be having right kind of data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning applied to that profile in terms of segmentation, right? So what is your audience strategy? How do you segment your data in real time? How do you augment and improve your segmentation in real time in terms of real-time events happening, for example? Now, all of this can then also be activated to different kinds of systems or touch points for your customers. So whether you talk about advertising, in the earlier example that I was talking about advertising on, say, Facebook versus new IDs versus publisher direct, so on and so forth. So how do you then connect? And because you have first-party based asset in, of course, a privacy safe manner that can be connected to your different outlets or activation points. So advertising ecosystem, your personalization tools, looking at your internal systems. If you want to connect the data and profile, unified profile back to your internal enterprise systems, you can do that. So 3 core components, right? Data in, profile management, stitching, data science applied, and then activation. Now you've got to have a system which does all 3 of these, and that's the way forward. What does that really mean, right? So once you get that, just a simple example, what it essentially means is that you now have ability to collect intelligence across touch points and across the journey, right? So right from inspiration, motivation phase to planning, booking, pre-trip, in-trip. Now I put some of the attributes of data here, but what it essentially means is that every single touch point, there is some data generated, and there is a part of data that you own, right? So all of this data, if they can be orchestrated in a real-time manner, what it means is that with the unified view that you have for the customer and the intelligence around it, you should be able to orchestrate and optimize journey in each of these individual touch points. At the same time, you should be also able to, at a system level, scale your personalization efforts, right? So when you talk about personalization, it is not about touching one customer. It is not about personalized experience for a couple of customers. It is about scale. It is about your entire customer base, so on and so forth. So this leads to your end-to-end real-time experience management. And that, of course, converts into solving various problems around the key investment areas that Marianne was talking about. How do you drive more and more customers to your direct channels? How do you reduce your dependencies on external channels? How do you have more upsell? How do you have ancillary sales going up? How do you have a better lifetime value for your customers? All of that is dependent upon that holistic view of customer, right? So, just give you an example of, a hotel scenario, right? So not only throughout the journey, but if I just zoom in a little bit on, say from booking to post-stay kind of an experience, even in that, you can go really, really granular, right? So somebody books a trip, for example, right? And books a hotel and a room. And then they went ahead and, so they downloaded your, I've just put an example here for Savoy Resort. But if you're a resort, for example, customer downloads the app, and then throughout the journey, you keep on nudging them, right? So right before they stay, they get a notification. Once they're arriving the hotel, they get a push notification on your mobile. Now that's another channel on your app. Then, of course, you can use your digital room keys and digital concierge and all of that. Then you can keep on nudging with the external and additional ancillary offers. So you can drive your ancillary sale while they're on stay. Also, you can set your preferences for the customer, just to make it very, very customized and personalized for the customer as an experience. And that goes beyond that in terms of post-stay surveys, post-stay amplification. Can they go and, sort of echo some good words in the market and things like that. So basically amplifies your brand. So what I'm trying to convey here is that once you have achieved that 360 view of the customer and looking at first-party data asset, you will be able to go granular in each phase of the journey and personalize to the maximum extent that you could. Another point of view is around measurement, right? So what is the impact when you're talking about the way ahead in terms of all of these changes? What is the impact in terms of how you measure marketing effectiveness today? For example, you look at your media impressions, conversions, so on and so forth. What's the way forward? What's changing here? So first thing, I think the funnels, the sales funnel or the marketing funnel, consumers funnels are going to be more and more complex, right, based on the consumer behavior. But this is going to be streamlined more if you have end-to-end intelligence about the customer. So there's going to be a positive news on the measurement side, because now one, data is clean, but also you have more and more visibility with the data that you own. There will be new kind of matrices coming in, right? So for example, I said that you've got to be driving more and more authentication. That means you look beyond cost of acquisition. Now you start looking at cost of authentication, right? What does it really take you to get people share their data with you? What do you do? What do you do in terms of design change, marketing vehicles? So new matrices coming up, right? And new ways of measuring, such as, for example, incrementality testing based on A/B test. So you show different kinds of experiences to control, and different kinds of experiences to the audience that you wish to reach out to, and look at an incremental test and see what is the lift. So there are new kind of methodologies in terms of the way you understand the effectiveness of media or your marketing efforts. As I said, because we are going to be more and more first-party data driven, whatever measurement you are going to look at in future is going to be more targeted. It is going to be more accurate with people-based measurement. And it gives you an opportunity to also measure and optimize throughout the life cycle. Just because you own a lot of data around your customers, and also have that stitch view of the journey, not for one sales cycle, but across life cycle, right? So in terms of life stages and life cycle, right? So that's going to change in terms of the effectiveness. Now, particularly talking about measurement funnel, right? In the various stages of the funnel, you talk about awareness, reaching out to the customers or travelers, looking at the consideration phase, looking at conversion, experience, advocacy, loyalty, so on and so forth. There are multiple changes that has happened here, right? So one is, as I said, there are stages wherein different phases of funnel or stages of funnel are also sort of merging, or maybe there are new funnels coming up. So for example, the focus on destination funnel for every single brand has gone up, right? Because if you look at platforms such as Facebook, people search at a destination level, and that's the highest volume. So there are additional funnels, and you even if you are not a, sort of a tourism organization, you got to be looking at the importance of destination keywords. How do you focus and capture more and more in the destination phase? Across the funnel, if you look about product offers and prices, there has to be orchestration in terms of what people are looking into app when they come to the web. Can you just continue the journey and things like that? So the key takeaway from this slide is that, you got to be, be ready with all of this first-party planning, in first-party data planning in terms of different stages of funnel also changing for measurements. Right? And as I said earlier, the measurements are now also going to be more first-party data based. So because you activate your data in your first-party destinations, whether you talk about publisher direct, whether you talk about sort of Facebook, Google, so on and so forth, all of that data is because matching at one and one level, then the effectiveness is more in terms of measurement as well. Similarly for attribution, because now you can match data at one level because of all of these changes that is happening in the ecosystem, I think the attribution is going to be more regulated, right? So the attribution is going to go beyond, for example, not just digital marketing channels. how would you match with the customer data platform? You should be able to understand that a digital touch point was also impacted by a call center touch point, so on and so forth. It's going to be more and more holistic if you're talking about attribution. Right? So, okay, last section, I'm talking about practicality of, okay, so all good stuff. Now, how do I get started? What do I need to do? So let me give you, some of the, I would say, initial ideas in terms of what we need to do. So if you look at the operating model for data-driven marketing, like what should you operate as a business if you're looking at data-driven marketing in the future, right? The way things are going to be. First thing is that you've got to be customer journey obsessed, I will say, right? So you've got to be looking at putting customer journeys at detail level in every single process that you design. The second one is data-driven accountability, right? So it's not just about saying marketing team being data-driven and everybody else is just based on their guts, right? It doesn't work that way. So how do you create processes for people to be accountable? And the third part is structure of team. Of course, you've got to be upskilling, you've got to be teaching your people new skills, you've got to be hiring right kind of talents, so on and so forth. So these are the three key pillars of the house, right? That leads you to building an operating model for data-driven marketing. There is a process, and this process needs to be accelerated, various stages of data-driven marketing, right from your strategy, defining the KPIs, objectives, to gathering data, to organizing data, to identify the channels that matter for your customers, activate campaigns, measure the performance, and then optimize. Now, the key thing for these multiple steps in data-driven marketing is that you've got to be reducing the cycle time of all of these stages. You can't afford to have all of this done in 4 months, So everything is going real time. You've got to be reducing the cycle time, and that's where technology plays a role. So if you look at, sort of a hotel example again in terms of journey stages. So the three pillars that I was talking about, first you've got to look at your journey stages, right? So deep dive, find out various components of a particular journey. In search, what people do. It's just a high level view, but even in search, there can be multiple stages, right? There are multiple ways. There will be overlaps in terms of channels, things like that. So you define your objectives based on different journey stages and stick to it, commit to those and say, okay, in search, this is what I want to get to reach out to the customer with the right kind of brand perception and things like that. Similarly, in your plan, consider book, stay, loyalty, different stages, get the objectives clear. Then define your KPIs for each of these stages and get people accountable to these KPIs. What is it really that matters? Second, are there new kind of KPIs coming in? For example, cost of authentication that I was talking about. Are you ready as an organization to make that change wherein people believe, trust in that KPI and everybody works towards the same goal? And finally, what data you need to analyze before you build a strategy and what data you need to analyze, consume, and act upon once you have the strategy rolled out, right? So right now, looking from media data to your internal data to data that is based on different kind of transaction funnel, or it can also be your loyalty data and things like that. So there has to be clear mapping in terms of implementation, accountability, both from a system perspective, process perspective, but also from people perspective. And having said so, right, this is a humongous job. There has to be a maturity curve, right? Not everybody, every size of player is going to be achieving this on day one. So there is a maturity model, right? So you start somewhere, you reach somewhere, you got to be understanding what needs in terms of what does it need in terms of technology, what does it need in terms of people enablement and things like that. So there are multiple stages, and this is not, of course, hard-lined, but this is one way of looking at it. But you can be basic to start with, then you become opportunistic, wherein find new opportunities. Then you become more systematic around whatever you want to do. Then you are at the sort of differentiating stage. And that basically leads to the final stage, that is transformational. So each of these stages, you need to take care of various components evolving, right? So right from your data layer, your data collection mechanism, looking at your channels, looking at your maturity in terms of internal tech, consolidation, all of that. So there will be a change in each of these areas, and I've listed out some here. So you might start with, the first stage would be you have siloed data. So can you at least start it doing some ad hoc validations and planning, and can we bring at least 2, 3, 4 data sets together? Then you drive the culture of performance, right? So how can you get, right, easy to consume, democratized dashboards? Everybody has availability to, we all can sit in a room and talk about common KPIs, looking at common performance levers, things like that. At this stage, you might be reactive to your inputs to campaign planning. You might run a campaign, then analyze it. And that's also okay to start with, right? And you might rely on, lesser data that you own, or in terms of stitch data that you might have. So then you go to the next stage, is wherein you will start aggregating data at your department level, try to form a source of truth of your data, so common single source of truth, then proactive insights, right? So not just reactive insights to your campaign, but also in the planning stage. Can you provide right input to your marketing team, revenue management team, so on and so forth, in terms of building that insight-based campaign planning? And how do you become more and more dependent on or independent of external data sources, right? Then it goes beyond in terms of integration. So then it becomes really a system level integration of your data across the company. There is a accountability around common set of KPIs, customer journeys are mapped. There is a democratization that happens, meaning that everybody in the organization has access to data. Everybody has a say. It's not just limited to certain people, just analysts and things like that. There is an ease of use for marketers and things like that. Now, the differentiating stage is where you should be. If you achieve this, you should be able to differentiate with your, say, competition in the market, right? So your campaigns are now data inputs based. You have embedded your data-driven thinking into planning. You have streamlined the processes for how do you qualify and quantify the impact. There is a culture in terms of everybody looking at data before saying anything, doing anything. And finally, the nirvana stage is your transformational stage, wherein you are having a single 360-degree view of the customer, mostly real time. You have an operating model. You get, in terms of the usage of data, predictive, prescriptive. You know what's going to happen with your customers. You have a hypothesis that you can test with your data, and so you can execute your strategy. And of course, you are omni-channel. So consistent experience across channels at a given point in time to your customers, irrespective of the life stage or the life cycle they are into. So that's kind of nirvana stage, but it's a gradual journey. You got to take a step by step. Doesn't matter where you are right now. You can start, be aware of the changes that are happening right now and start building. So with that, I just wanted to go on to the last slide that talks about a bit of the key takeaways that we learned today. And then I'll pass it back on to Delicia. So the first thing, as I said, right, data-driven marketing is a stepwise process. Don't panic. It will take time. You can start where you are and start building around it. 360 degrees view of the customer is the holy grail. Start thinking about it now, right? So in whatever sense, but start building it. Fragmentation has been the biggest problem, needs to be solved. System, people, processes, data, everything is fragmented. Customer experience and centricity are the driving forces, got to be in the center. And things need to be democratized based on first-party data and keeping consumer privacy in the mind. So this is really, really important. I hope this helps in terms of the key takeaways. Of course, there is so much to cover in this limited time, but I honestly believe that it should be helping in some sense. I'll take you back to Delicia. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, everyone. And Gaurav and Marianne, thank you for that very detailed and insightful presentation. I'm sure all of us learned a lot from that session. I know I did, a lot to go through. Again, for some of the people who are joining us for this session as well, it's a lot to take in, right? So again, at which stage of the marketing funnel should businesses focus on when optimizing their marketing, especially in a time where travel is slow to resume?
Yeah, That's a great question. Thanks, Delicia. So it really depends, right? So there has to be a mapping in terms of where you are in the journey as a brand, right? And for some of the brands and companies, I think acquisition could be really a game changer, right? So as I said, there has to be alignment in terms of your overall strategy and sort of focus areas in a given year, for example, looking at whether it is a short term or whether it is a long term. But acquisition stage is a good stage to start, because also logically it fits into the sequential journey of consumer journey. But it's really, really important that you map this to your key top level strategy and say that, are you a business which is focused more on acquisition, right? Is your business driven by how you acquire new customers? Is there a substantial benefit in terms of you reducing the cost of acquisition or driving more and more incremental revenue for your newly acquired customers? On the other hand, it might be you are a business which is focused more on growing business through your loyalty base, right? Growing business through your existing customers. So based on that, you got to be really optimizing one of those stages. And then you got to be going deeper in terms of what do you really need? Do you need data that you own across channels in a real-time manner, so on and so forth? So I think the simple answer is that you need to tie with your business model and then pick any of these stages is fine. It doesn't have to be a linear journey. It can be a crisscross journey in terms of where you start. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Gaurav. Marianne, I think there's a question for you. From a privacy perspective, there's a lot to consider. What are the 3 key things that we need to look out for before using our customer data to make sure that we're aligned with all the rules and policy regulations?
Thanks for that question. It is definitely a wide area with growing regulations across like the US, GDPR, Singapore, and around the region. It is going to be very hard to really be compliant with all the regulations unless you spend a lot of time to really delve into each market that you are really focusing on. So what I would suggest is what is your key markets? And that is where you might start in terms of the regulations compliance. But as a general note, I would recommend people to think about privacy as really that exchange. What is the value that you are giving to the end customer in exchange for them, giving something that really identifies them? And that is really giving them choice, the transparency, and of course the power to really take care of their data. So one thing is, of course, making sure your consent notices are clear, they're not murky and complicated and difficult to navigate. Secondly, I would say, give them the option to opt out easily, not click on the link that it links to another link and another link, another link. That experience makes them get the feeling that you're really hanging on to data, which is not a positive one. And of course, thirdly, I would say, think of privacy as by design and an experience, whereby in the whole journey, right from the get-go, and not only after you've collected the data, that you start thinking about privacy. Privacy should be right up front. What are you collecting it for? And really just be very focused and narrowed so that your consent and the consent that you get from them is very targeted. Maybe it's to give them value-added services in your brand. So those are the 3 key things I would say.
So it has to be a win-win with your consumers as well, as you're acquiring data. So very good tips for us to note there. Gaurav, I think you talked about this idea of the cookieless future. I think some of us are quite worried, especially from an SME perspective. How then as you start learning how to use cookies effectively in the very first get-go, how can we then further future-proof your marketing plans if they're anchored to the idea of cookies and how we use them effectively?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think we should be very accepting of the fact that there are few things in the way we are trying to solve this problem collectively as an industry. There are certain unknowns. That's the first acknowledgement that we need to have, right? And things are evolving. But from an SME perspective, I think what is important is that maximize on the current resources, right? So look at what are the channels today wherein you can activate, right? So for example, it could be Facebook, it could be one of the channels that you can think of. And then in long term, you think of how do you diversify? So, it's not that with third-party cookies going on, marketing is dead, right? I mean, there are still channels, there are still ways of communicating. You've got to be maximizing on those. But what's important is that, are you thinking as a business to build that asset? And when I say build that asset, do you have the right kind of content? For example, you could be a SME, but you have, a way of creating content that consumers are interested into. That could be your side priority today, but it becomes your first priority in the future. And because that gives you a vehicle for collecting data. So it goes to be a stepwise process. And the other thing that, it's not a situation of despair. I think all of us are collectively trying to solve this problem, and there will be advancements. So when the cookies are out, there will be new IDs, there will be, ways of connecting. I also think as people accept this fact more and more, they will start, people will also, or brands will also start loosening up a little bit in terms of, right now today, there's a lot of concern in terms of, should we share data with each other? Can second-party partnerships be a reality? Well, it can be. There are people already doing it. It's just that they are ahead of curve, right? So you've got to find those avenues in terms of where you can monetize your data, but also you get something in return. And lastly, you've got to be thinking of creating new avenues. Can you create a new app that is content-centric and wherein people can come and give you data? So there are multiple stages into it, but don't panic. There is something to act upon. Let's try to maximize that.
Thank you, Gaurav. There's actually a very specific product question from an Adobe perspective. How will the new privacy requirements and cookieless future affect the Adobe products, for instance, Adobe Analytics and Audience Manager?
Well, that's a great question and relevant, and I'm assuming the person asking this question is Adobe user, and which is great news for us. Yeah, so there are two parts of this whole process and the impact. Of course, we have done assessment. We are ready. First is that there is no huge impact on solutions such as analytics, because we have been ahead of time in terms of preparing ourselves with first-party data collections, CNAME mappings, and those kind of technicalities that enable you to not be impacted by third-party. Audience Manager, there will be certain impact, because Audience Manager as a DMP is primarily focused on collecting cookies data, because that's how advertising has worked over a period of time. So in terms of the impact, one, we have introduced few features, before, again, ahead of time in Audience Manager that helps you to mitigate that risk. For example, there's something called as people-based destination in Audience Manager, which gives you an agility to connect directly to destinations such as Facebook, Google, and things like that at people-based identifiers. But also, we do see that as we progress, we are going to go more and more towards a CDP kind of premise, and at some point in time, Audience Manager will take shape of, we already have a CDP offering right now, but we of course we are aware of the transition time and what does it take to transit. At some point in time, we will transit to get our customers to transit to CDP, which is more and more compliant to what we are looking for in future. So lesser impact on analytics and those solutions, especially on the DMP side, there is an impact. We already have a product. All we need to do is to mitigate the risk in the transition period and make sure that there is an onboarding in future.
Thank you. We'll take a couple more questions from the group.
Sure.
First question is really about the B2B business. So how do we apply this data-driven approach to the B2B business, where the customer is more than one person and more than one department, plus the fact that the organization itself has also has its own peculiar decision-making framework? Yeah.
No, that's a great question again. So when I talk about CDP, I know we are quite skewed, and probably my presentation will also skewed towards B2C scenarios, but it definitely applies to B2B as well, right? I mean, if I can talk about on behalf of, say, for example, what Adobe is doing right now, the CDP offering that we have today is not just B2C, it is also B2B, right? So what it means is that these principles of having the operating model, customer journey mapping, and then also infusing your B2B to B2C data. Can I connect an enterprise level ID to a personal ID for someone? And that's a reality. There are case studies and use cases where people are already doing it. So the whole customer data platform is not just based on, so individual level data. This is also household level, account level data. So the whole ABM, account-based marketing, is also going to follow the same principle. Right, so it's just that the customer journeys are different. Of course, the data sources might be different, and the way you stitch IDs and deterministically or probabilistically can be different. But the principles I definitely align to B2B businesses as well, and we should be, as a B2B business, thinking in the same way. There is no differentiation in terms of how. Of course, the cookies problem is slightly less grave in terms of B2B businesses, but the unification, reducing the fragmentation, all of those is completely relevant.
Thank you, Gaurav. So again, more similarities than differences between, a really B2C and a B2B approach. The last question is really focused around data and the acquisition of data. So I would say that this question is in three parts. First of which is that first-party data collection is costly. What are some alternatives for some of the smaller players or the SMEs to consider? And then in terms of, with a limited budget, trying to build that worldview through data, where's a good place to start? And then again, what's the 1, 2, 3 to really starting that out and making sure that you're acquiring it in the proper ways according to the right policy? So perhaps Gaurav and Marianne, you could take us home with a response to that.
Sure. Yeah, let me take a stab on that. And of course, Marianne can add. Yeah, there are so many questions here. There is no cookie cutter approach to this cookie-less problem. But yeah, for the first party acquisition side of things, I think there's no option that to be innovative in terms of and creative in terms of finding avenues to collect data, right? So as I said, give some of the examples. It could be monetizing your content through paywalls and say that, do you have some premium content, right? Even you could be not non-content business, but you can still rely on content to collect data. Based on the scale of business, you could think of creating new kind of apps that is solely purpose based on you getting more information from the customers. That's one, right? The second thing is that look actively towards second-party partnerships, right? So look at, how is that you can leverage on, getting data from some of the people who actually collect data. It can be cross-industry. It doesn't have to be just your industry, right? So that's a big opportunity, and technology is getting ready, right? In terms of making sure that people are not thinking of this as a privacy violation, and second-party partnerships are more welcome. Third piece that I see evolving is that, like the third-party data providers and marketplaces, there will be going to be sort of second-party data marketplaces, right? So the agility of you getting access to second-party data, which is based on people-based identifiers, less cost-intensive, is going to come up. It's going to be a reality. There is no way out. We have to work it out together. And last, point in terms of where do I really start? I think the question today is that, well, I mean, if you don't have absolutely any data right now, so then you've got to be, looking after, second-party data partnerships, looking after how can you maximize the time that you have at hand in terms of using third-party data, but also understanding your customers better in terms of opening the right kind of avenues for data collection. That's exactly where you start, and also identify which part of the customer journey is where you want to focus more on in terms of data collection. I'll just have Marianne, add anything if she has.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking as just a recipient of ads and content, the more it hits home to what is relevant for me, the more I'm willing to give emails or phone numbers, because I know it's adding value to my life and my day-to-day. And maybe the last point I would say in terms of data collection, if I may belabor that point, really just collect what is necessary. There's been some surveys done in Singapore whereby the majority of applications or mobile apps require all sorts of access to your gallery, to your geolocation, everything, which are actually not really relevant, and they create a very not so favorable view for the person who's actually having to consent to all these. So I would just say, be really targeted, just ask for what you really need, and that keeps you more compliant with the law as well.
All right, thank you both. We have 1 minute. Last minute of wisdom from you, Gaurav.
Act now. I will say act now. It's and it's a collective responsibility, because I think there has been a bit of a chicken and egg story, and people say ad tech will solve this problem, publishers will solve this problem, and brands will solve this problem at some point in time. I think all of us have a role to play, whether you are a tech company, whether you are brands. So start building your first party data now. Don't please delay this. This is going to be the future of marketing, and we got to be doing more in terms of justifying why we need to collect more and more data from customers. And this is going to be win-win. It is not right that customers don't want to share any of their data. They do. They just want to get a right explanation why they should be.
Yep, and really just to echo Marianne again, collect only what you need, right? Make the experience a seamless one and win-win for both the customer and yourself. And to our friends who engage in B2B engagement, it's also a similar journey, right? Thinking about it from a more broader worldview as opposed to sticking to saying, I'm a B2B audience and therefore it has to be different in so many ways. Thank you both for taking the time today. It's been a very insightful presentation and discussion, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with you. I'm sure everyone at today's masterclass has learned something really new and are a little less afraid of what's to come, the cookieless future, and have now some action steps in terms of starting out on their data gathering journey. And of course, with the great reminders from Marianne there as to how to make sure we do this with a conscience as well, and really making sure that we're win-win on both sides and align with overall policies and guidelines as well. Thank you both.
Thanks, Denise, for your time, and thanks everybody for your time.
No problem. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the STB Marketing College Masterclass series, thank you everyone for joining today's session. It was a very detailed but yet insightful one, so much appreciated. Of course, we want to hear from you. There's a QR code on the right-hand side of the screen, so please scan that to share your feedback with us. And we hope that today's session will help you think about the road ahead and the action steps that you need to map in order to optimize your marketing journey. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next masterclass.